So I don't know how to really start this off. First of all, I've been super busy. And at the same time, I've been going down a whole goose chase when it comes to finding some of my ancestors that are buried in this particular cemetery that I've been having dreams about a couple months back. So, back in August, I was having back to back dreams about being at a cemetery and my ancestors were guiding me to where they are buried. And I had posted a video about this like over a month ago about spiritual research when it comes to like genealogy. And so not to be all over the place on this channel, I talk a lot about ancestry research, and a lot of the times I add in spirituality to it because that's how I usually find certain things about my family. Is always through some type of spiritual experience. And I made a playlist. I think I called it Spiritual Journey because this is something that is not organized when it comes to spirituality. It's like these things just come to you. And I made a playlist because of that, just to like kind of organize my thoughts in my videos because it's all over the place. So that's what I usually do when it comes to like my ancestry research. I always have some type of spiritual experience and I follow that intuition and it usually leads me to my answer. So back in August, I was having back to back dreams of me being at the cemetery. Usually in my dreams, it was always at night. And my ancestors were like guiding me to the back of the cemetery. So just to pull back a bit. So this particular side of the family that I'm talking about, I've always heard were the Lenape Indians on Staten Island, where I live in New York. Um, for those who don't know where Staten Island is, it's really close to New Jersey. So yeah, so I've always been told that I was Lenape Indian from Staten Island, and also on that side, there's like an Italian great great grandfather, and so on and so forth, right? And I've been told that they were buried at a particular cemetery out here. Um, but I wouldn't know where to find them because they're buried way in the back by the bushes, the trees, all that stuff. Like I'll never find them unless somebody who knows where they're buried takes me to where they're buried. But the problem is all the people in my family that knew where they were buried, they all passed away. So all the living family members, they had no idea where they're buried. So fast forward, I've been having dreams that my ancestors were guiding me to where they were buried. And in my dreams, I was always sent to the back of the cemetery. And in one particular dream, one of my ancestors guided me to the back, but then they pointed to the side, like all the way on the other side of the cemetery towards the end. Um, I remember seeing a plot, and for some reason, there was balloons and like party stuff at this plot. And so usually in dreams, right, when a spirit wants you to remember something, they'll over exaggerate a particular moment. This way, when you wake up, you'll remember that moment because a lot of the times you can forget what you've dreamt about. So if you add something like like exaggeration, you'll most likely remember. And I know that for a fact because one of my cousins who passed away, she had did something really dramatic in my dream, and she told me that was to get my attention. So that's why they do it. So in my dream, when my ancestor pointed to where they are buried way on the other side, I remember seeing like balloons and like party stuff. And where they were buried was in like this open field space of the cemetery. And I was a little confused because the people in my family who had passed away, they said that this some of the family were buried way in the back, and I'll never be able to find it because of all the trees and the bushes and whatnot. But for some reason, my ancestors were pointing to a open field, like a very obvious spot to look for. So when I woke up, I was like, okay, something's up. And I kept having those dreams back to back to back to where it was starting to bother me because I was getting such a pull to go to the cemetery. So I was like, you know what? Let me get up and see. And at first, I wasn't going to do it because I sound like a crazy person. I was going to contact the cemetery and tell them like, hey, can you help me find this particular plot because I've been having dreams back to back to back. um I sound like a crazy person doing that. But then I went on their website, and they had 4 graves on this website. And the first grave that I saw was of my great grand uncle by the name of William Argampa. And when I saw that, I was like, confirmation. Because out of all the tombstones that is in that cemetery, why is my great grand uncle featured on their website? It's him, a lady that brought, I think, golf or tennis to the Americas. Um, this other guy, I think he owned like a beer company or something. And then this black woman who was a very famous blues singer, all buried there. But my great grand uncle, who served in like I think the World War I, he was the first one up on that website, and I was like, confirmation. So I contacted the cemetery and I told them everything, and one of the workers was able to help me locate where they are buried, and it's literally in the same exact spot that I was having in my dreams. I am at my family's plot in the cemetery, and it's a very old plot. And I wanted to write down names, but turns out they have a big gravestone that has been tipped over. So I told one of the workers of this place that I would pay to get a professional to lift this up. Now, we are confident that this is their plot because the way it's sketched out on the records and where they're buried at, there's only 2 very old plots in this section. So this has to be it. The other plot has like another family in it. So this is the only one. And I'm very certain this is their plot. But if anything, if this happens to be another family, at least I did a good deed by paying to get their gravestone lifted up. But I'm pretty sure this is my family because this is the only old plot in the area besides the other one, which is not my family. But I'm gonna look over there too a little bit more. But I don't think that's them. Um, yeah, and not for nothing. As I was standing here, I did feel like I did felt some energy, and it felt like I wanted to cry for some reason, but not out of sadness, but kind of out of like, I don't know, maybe remembrance or like or like some type of ancestry thing. Something. Is my family buried here? See, it's said yes. And turns out the lady who helped me, I told her about my great granduncle being up on their website. And she said the only reason why she knows about William Argampa was because around the same time that I was having these dreams back in August, the Boy Scout had recently visited the cemetery and they wanted to feature some of the soldiers that were buried there. So they randomly picked my great granduncle and put his tombstone on the website. And turns out he was a part of the Harlem Hellfighters, which I have to look into. I know it was a very famous group of black soldiers who fought in um, World War I, I believe. But that was the only reason why he was put on the website, randomly picked because of the Boy Scout that was visiting the cemetery all around the same time that I was having these dreams back in August. So it's not a coincidence. So she walked me over to this open field in the cemetery, and turns out it's the oldest part of the cemetery because this cemetery was founded, I think, back in like 1880 or 1860, somewhere around that time. Okay, it's been a lot that's been going on the past few weeks, so I'm like pretty all over the place. um so a lot of my ancestors are buried in this old section in this cemetery. So she took me to this open field and I saw the plot and my eyes just like everything. I just felt my whole energy field just like dropped to the floor because I'm like, this looks exactly like my dream. Now the thing was that the tombstone, which was a pretty big tombstone, it it was it fell to the floor. So the lady was like, I'm not sure if this is your family. The only way we would know for sure is if you would pay to get the tombstone flipped back into place. And I told the lady that I want to pay. I want to see. And at first, she was looking at me like I'm crazy. You know, she was laughing. She was just like, what if this is another family? What if you pay and this plot turns out to be another family? But I told the lady that I had a dream about this spot. My intuition is telling me otherwise. I have a feeling that this is my family. So she took me seriously after that, and I paid to get this tombstone flipped. Now, while I was there, I tried to use some paranormal equipment to like see. Um, However, it wasn't going well because one, the wind was starting to pick up. Um, Two, I got stung by a bee. I haven't been stung by a bee since I was a kid, and I got stung really. You know, it's not bee stings are not. I'm not afraid of bee stings. I've been stung so many times as a kid. It doesn't phase me. But this bee stung me really like hard. It was stuck right here. Um, that happened. And it could be this bee was attracted to me because of the scent that I was wearing. I was wearing some type of like oud. It could be, you know, that's the more technical reason to think about this. But on a spiritual sense, when you get stung by a bee, it's usually something telling you to like pay attention. So it was so funny as I was trying to use all these equipments. Um, I had a feeling to like pay attention because usually I follow intuition. Um, right before I started using the equipment, I was just standing there and I felt a overwhelming like energy. Um, it felt like I was going to cry at one point. It wasn't like out of sadness. It felt like somebody was saying hello. Um, it was really, I guess one would say strange, but to me, I know that was my family saying like hi or whatever something. But then I started pulling out all this equipment. I'm trying to like see if I can like catch them, like hear their voice on a recorder or something. And therefore, it's like I'm not even being in the moment. So it didn't really go that well. But on the contrary, it did turn out to be my family. At first, it took over a week because the people that were supposed to be there to flip the tombstone, they needed to use special equipment, and they wasn't there for like over a week, so I had to wait. And after a while, I just kept getting, I was starting to feel a little bit doubtful because the worker, she was just like, are you sure you really want to do this? What if it's not your family? And I told her, like, hey, if it's not my family, at least I did a good deed by flipping whoever's family this is, their tombstone. So, but I was starting to feel a little bit doubtful. But then, like maybe 2 weeks later, I got a message from the woman, and she was so excited because she was like, this is your family's plot. So at this plot, it's my great great grandfather who was an Italian immigrant. Um, Turns out he never spoke a lick of English. He only spoke like Sicilian or something like that. Um, my great great grandmother, who is the Lenape Indian, she's buried there along with some of their children. I don't know how they got together if my great great grandfather never spoke a lick of English. He must have had some game to, like, get with a woman who doesn't even understand like what the heck you're saying. But anyway, so they're all buried there, and instead of feeling like oh my god, I was lost in thought because I was just like, what am I tapping into? Because my dreams, everything, this turned out to be true. Now, it turns out the last name Argampa is not really my great great grandfather's last name. His last name was originally Lacampo or Lacampio, something like that. But he had changed his last name to Argampa because he was being discriminated against for being Italian, Southern Italian, because the Northern Italians, they look more like European, and the Southern Italians, it's a mixture. So he was discriminated against for being Southern Italian. And on top of that, his family had disowned him for dating my great great grandmother, who was a brown skinned Native American woman. Now, there are other ancestors buried in that cemetery that I need to look for and that I'm being guided to look for. And as I am saying this, my mic just went out. Like, I, you know what? Whatever. So, and usually when that happens, especially if you done charged all your equipment, it's usually like a spirit that may be around, and they usually get energy from like like lights and technology type of stuff. But anyway, there are other ancestors of mine that are buried in that cemetery that I'm being guided to look for. So lately I've been like back and forth at the cemetery. And yesterday when I was there, I was looking around and I was at a section where there's so many like old tombstones. And I was by myself and I was talking to the people that were buried there, just walking around. And I was saying like I'm looking for my family. Can anybody like help point to me like where they're buried? And no, like unless you see a spirit right in front of you, you're not gonna see anybody pointing in the direction like where you're trying to like go. Um, but I just kept getting a pull to like keep going further and further back into the cemetery. Um, but I was nervous, so I didn't go further back. So next time I go, I'll take that leap of faith and just go further back into the cemetery. But it just looked a little bit intimidating. But while I was there, I was recording, the scenery and everything. Didn't think nothing of it. And when I played back some of the audio, it had like a staticky noise to it. And when that happens, it's usually because of spirits like kind of manipulating the technology, like the phone and everything, because they're trying to like get in contact with you or like something like that. I'm not a professional paranormal ghost hunter or anything, but I have been told that's the reason why if you hear like static noise. And I was thinking of all the technical, like practical things, but nothing was adding up. So I don't know what that was about. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. And this time too, yesterday when I went back to the cemetery, instead of using all the fancy equipments, like I used the recorder, I used the dowsing rods, which I love best. I used a EVP recorder, which I feel like those apps they just throw out words. However, when I was using the EVP app, um, I think I forgot the name of the app that I have. I think it's like Spiritual Talker. Funny enough, the name William kept coming out, not at the cemetery, but back here when I was just fooling around with it. The name William kept popping up. So that's the only thing that I find interesting about that experience with the app. Other than that, I do feel like it just throws out words, but at the same time, I do understand if spirits really want to get in contact with you. I do think they have the ability to manipulate an app, but I don't know. Between that and like the recorder, like a regular recorder, I find the recorder works better. However, when I was there, the one was too loud to like pick anything up. The dowsing rods, I love that the most. But like I said, it was a lot of distraction and being stung by that bee. I really felt like, okay, I really need to pay attention. Like, let me get out of these, um, you know, equipment stuff and really get into my body and feel what's going on. And when I went back to the cemetery, instead of using equipment, I just really listened to what is coming to me. And I have felt I did feel a presence when I was there yesterday. It's really hard to explain. I felt a muffle in my left ear. Um, at some moments, the air felt a little. it was really windy, but at some moments it did feel like something like was at a standstill, or the moment felt a little, just a teeny bit heavy. And I did hear a voice. I did hear a voice, but it was really quick. It was really quick, and it sounded like a man's voice. And yeah, so that's what I did when I went back to the cemetery. Instead of using all that special equipment stuff, I just was like, you know what, let me just be in the moment and speak from the heart instead of like being all gadgety, because for some reason, I don't know, I guess my family was like, what are you doing? Like, what is going on? So yeah, that was my experience at the cemetery. Also too, now that I know that my great great grandfather never really spoke a lick of English, all he knew was Italian, Sicilian language. Um, I am going to start learning Italian, so this way when I go to like the grave and stuff like that, I can speak Italian to him. Um, when I went yesterday, I addressed him, instead of calling him grandpa, I said no no. No no means grandpa in Italian, and nonna means grandmother. So this gives me an excuse to start learning some Italian. You know, maybe I might take a trip to Italy. We'll see. But yeah, it's pretty cool digging and diving deep into all this stuff and hearing stories of who your ancestors were. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, I am on the hunt for the rest of my ancestors that are buried there. Not really on the hunt, but more like being guided. So I just need to take that leap of faith and continue to go further back into the cemetery. One of my uncles that I recently got in contact with, because I started telling my family what has been happening, and I even post about this on Facebook, and tons of people have been reaching out. They're like super shocked. Just, I didn't think that I was gonna have that effect on people. Like, I had no idea that other people would find this like interesting. Because to me, I look like a crazy person. But one of my uncles was telling me that my great great grandmother, my indigenous American great great grandmother that's buried there, her father, who was also buried there, he was the chief out here in Staten Island. So now I'm trying to put all of this together, because it's really important to uncover all the truths of what happened in our family's past, because I do feel like the masses do manipulate certain things, like try to hide certain truths from us for whatever reason. That could be a conversation for another time. But for me, it's really important to like dig into this and really see, are a lot of so-called Black Americans have indigenous ancestry, or is, indigenous American? And from my experiences, especially being a part of a tribe and all that stuff, it's a no-brainer, like, yes. But it takes some time doing like genealogy research, because they've done a really good job of hiding all of this information. Like the paper trail, it's a headache to look through. So it is really important. And interesting enough, the worker that helped me, she was telling me that the younger generation, for some reason, she's been getting a lot of phone calls from the younger generation, who are seeking to find their family's graves. And, I told her that it's pretty cool. I don't know why, but when I got back and as I was thinking about it, I did thought about how, well, I'm a millennial, and I feel like my generation and younger are pretty lost right now. Um, and we do need to get back into like community and family and, you know, figure out what this is all about. And the more technology gets put into place, the more disconnected we are from what it is to be a spirit, human, whatever. So I feel like that's one of the reasons subconsciously of why the younger generation is seeking out to figure out like where they came from and like what is all of this. I don't know, it's just a thought in my head. But that's all I have for this video. Hopefully my story like inspires or resonates in some type of way. However, this is going to help you out on your genealogy journey. I don't know, just trust your intuition and follow it. And hopefully it leads you to your answers.